Multiple tropical systems developing across northern Australia right now. The remnants of ex-tropical Cyclone Koji still causing problems in Queensland northwest. A potential new low forming in the Coral Sea and the possibility of significant rainfall right through to Australia Day. That what we're retracking. I've been going through the latest data from the Bureau of Meteorology, cross-referencing that with the Access model, the European model and the GFS. And whilst there is some disagreement on the finer details, all the major forecast systems are pointing towards an active tropical pattern continuing across northern Australia for at least the next 10 to 14 days. Let start with what's happening right now, because if you are in northwestern Queensland, you've been copping it for the better part of 2 weeks, and unfortunately it's not over yet. The remnants of ex-tropical Cyclone Koji are currently sitting about 150 kilometres north of Mount Isa. Now, Koji made landfall on the central Queensland coast several days ago and really gave Mackay a good blow. Category 2 system at landfall. Since then, it's weakened significantly, but it's maintained enough organisation to keep dragging moisture in from the Gulf of Carpentaria. Throughout today, we've seen slow-moving thunderstorms producing falls between 30 and 80 millimetres in isolated pockets north of Mount Isa. Nothing catastrophic in isolation, but here's the problem. This area has already received significant rainfall accumulations over the past fortnight. The ground is saturated, the rivers are swollen, the catchments simply cannot handle any more water. I've been watching the webcam footage from around the Blackwater area, and it really puts things into perspective. Roads that were clearly visible 3 days ago are now completely underwater. We are talking about major river crossings where land cruisers were driving through just a few days back that are now impassable. That gives you an idea of just how much water is moving through this part of Queensland right now. The flooding situation remains serious. Jenny Line in the northwest has thankfully started to drop a little bit. Water levels are beginning to recede as we see low tides in the Gulf working to drain some of the floodwaters. But the situation remains precarious. Even another 50 millimetres of rain and those levels go straight back up to major flood status without notice. For those of you in the Flinders and Norman River catchments, stay vigilant. The Bureau still has flood warnings active, and they there for good reason. If it's flooded, forget it. That's the SES message, and it applies absolutely right now. Do not attempt to drive through floodwater, no matter how well you think you know the crossing. The good news for northwestern Queensland is that this system is tracking towards the northwest. By Friday, the bulk of the rainfall activity should clear out towards the Northern Territory. You will still see isolated afternoon thunderstorms through Saturday and Sunday, but nothing like what you've been dealing with. From the weekend onwards, rainfall becomes primarily coastal based. Now, let's talk about what's happening out in the Coral Sea, because this is where things get interesting for the next couple of weeks. Tropical low 14U is currently located well to the northeast of Queensland, roughly 1,500 kilometres offshore from Rockhampton, tracking towards New Caledonia. This system is expected to develop into a tropical cyclone over the coming days, likely reaching that threshold sometime between Monday the 19th and Wednesday the 21st of January. Before anyone in Queensland starts worrying about this one, let me be clear. This system poses no threat to the Australian mainland. It's going to remain well offshore, tracking towards Vanuatu and New Caledonia. Our friends in the French Pacific Territory may need to prepare for a weak tropical cyclone and significant rainfall, but for Queensland, this one is a non-event. The reason I'm mentioning it is because it is occupying some of the atmospheric energy in the Coral Sea right now, and it gives us an indication of just how active the tropical pattern is across this part of the world. What's more relevant for Queensland is what's developing closer to home, and this is where we need to pay attention to the period between the 20th and 25th of January. The forecast models are showing increasing signals for a new area of low pressure development in the Coral Sea during that window. Now, the exact position and intensity remain uncertain at this point. That is the nature of forecasting 7 to 10 days out. But multiple model runs are now picking up on this signal, which tells me there is something genuine brewing. The Access model model, which is our homegrown Australian forecast system, is showing a broad area of low pressure developing somewhere between the Coral Sea and far north Queensland during the last week of January. The European model agrees with the general pattern but differs on the positioning. The GFS is also on board but tends to be a bit more aggressive with these systems. What does this mean in practical terms? If you are anywhere from Cairns up through Cape York through to Cooktown, Atherton and the surrounding tablelands, you should be mentally preparing for the possibility of heavy rainfall and potential flooding towards the end of January. We're not talking about a tropical cyclone at this stage. The models aren't showing strong enough rotation for that. What they are showing is a monsoon trough or rainfall depression type situation, which can still dump enormous amounts of water in a relatively short period. For those of you up in far north Queensland, particularly around Atherton and the tablelands, I know you felt isolated during the lead up to Cyclone Koji. That understandable. These systems can develop quickly and information doesn't always reach regional areas as fast as it should. My advice is to start preparing now, not in a panic but methodically. Check your emergency kit. Make sure you've got drinking water, non-perishables, torches, batteries. Know where your important documents are. If you are on a rural property, think about your livestock and what arrangements need to be made if roads become impassable. Speaking of the tablelands, I've been monitoring conditions up that way. Mount Carbine hit 34 degrees today with 80% humidity and an overnight minimum of 27. That's brutal. The combination of heat and humidity in that part of the world right now is genuinely oppressive. If you are working outdoors, take it seriously. Hydrate constantly. Take breaks. This is the kind of weather that can sneak up on you. Down in Townsville, it's been overcast but relatively quiet. The humidity is there, as it always is this time of year, but you have escaped the worst of the rainfall so far. That could change as we head towards the end of the month. Keep an eye on the forecasts. Cairns and the tropical coast have been dealing with the typical build-up conditions. Hot, sticky, uncomfortable. The sort of weather where you are sweating in your bed at night and wondering why you didn't invest in better air conditioning. That's just life in the tropics during January. The consolation is that when the rain does come, and it will, it brings some relief from that oppressive humidity. Now let's shift our attention to the remnants of Koji and where they're reheading next, because this could have significant implications for the top end of the Northern Territory. After clearing northwestern Queensland, the remnants of this system are expected to interact with the monsoon trough over the top end this weekend. And when that happens, we're re-looking at the potential for extremely heavy rainfall around the Darwin area. The European model is showing 4-day rainfall accumulations of 600 to 700 millimetres in pockets around the Adelaide River area out towards Bachelor and just south of Darwin. Those are massive numbers. To put that in perspective, that nearly 3/4 of a metre of rain in 4 days. Even for the top end during the wet season, that significant. Now, Darwin and the surrounding areas are built to handle monsoonal rainfall. The drainage systems are designed for it. The catchments can cope with several hundred millimetres over a few days without major drama. But 600 or 700 millimetres pushes the boundaries. There will likely be flood watches issued for the Darwin area, and some localised flooding is probable. If you are in the top end, this is your heads up. The heaviest falls look most likely Saturday through Monday. There is still some uncertainty about exactly where the rainfall axis sets up, but Darwin itself can expect at least 100 millimetres this weekend as a baseline. The bigger accumulations could be either southwest or southeast of the city, depending on how the system evolves. What happens after the system stalls over the top end is the $64,000 question. And honestly, the models don't have a clear answer yet. There are two scenarios playing out in the forecast guidance. The first scenario has the remnants of Koji drifting west into the Indian Ocean and potentially regenerating as it moves towards the Kimberley region of Western Australia. That would bring significant rainfall to the northwest of WA, but would spare Queensland from further impacts. The second scenario has the system making a U-turn back towards Queensland, feeding into the Gulf of Carpentaria and potentially contributing to yet another round of heavy rainfall for the northwest of the state. Given how much water is already on the ground up there, that's the last thing they need. My read on the steering flow right now suggests the first scenario is slightly more likely. The monsoon burst is strong, but the upper level pattern seems to favour a westward drift. However, and this is important, that S based on current guidance and could easily change over the next few days. The monsoon is a fickle beast, and these systems can surprise you. What we know for certain is that tropical activity is going to remain elevated across northern Australia right through to the end of January and likely into February. Whether that manifests as tropical cyclones or monsoon lows or simply persistent heavy rainfall depends on factors that are still coming into focus. For those asking about tropical cyclone chances over the next 10 days specifically, the outlook is actually relatively quiet. The very strength of the current monsoon burst works against organised tropical cyclone development. When the monsoon is this active, you tend to see broad areas of rain and thunderstorms rather than tight spinning tropical systems. That doesn't mean we out of the woods. Monsoon lows can intensify into tropical cyclones if conditions align. But for the immediate 10-day period, the models aren't showing strong signals for a direct tropical cyclone threat to the Australian mainland. February is a different story. There are some interesting signals in the longer range guidance for early February, particularly in the Coral Sea. It's too early to talk specifics, but it's worth flagging that the peak of cyclone season for Queensland typically runs from February through March. We've already had Koji make landfall unusually early in the season, which tells you something about how active conditions are right now. Let me take a moment to address the conditions across the rest of Queensland, because not everyone watching is in the tropical north. Central Queensland around Rockhampton has had more than enough rain. The humidity has been oppressive. Rivers are running high. Some of you have picked up over 180 millimetres in the past 4 days alone. The Calliope River, which was at flood warning status, has finally started to drop. Sun is coming out. That is positive news. The next few days look drier for the Central Coast, which will give catchments a chance to drain and communities a chance to clean up. Southeast Queensland, particularly around Brisbane and the Logan area, is in the opposite situation. Dry conditions have persisted, not much rain for quite a while. Dams are getting monitored, gardens are struggling. There's been talk about wanting some of that rain to head further south, and I understand the frustration. The pattern right now is keeping the really heavy rainfall confined to the tropics and central Queensland. Southeast Queensland is getting the humidity without the rain, which is arguably the worst of both worlds. For those hoping for a decent drenching in SEQ, the outlook isn't particularly promising over the next week or so. The tropical moisture is focused further north. Any rainfall you see will likely be from isolated afternoon thunderstorms rather than the widespread soaking events that fill dams and green up paddocks. Sorry to be the bearer of disappointing news, but I'd rather give you the accurate picture than false hope. Victoria and areas further south have been asking about rain as well. The short answer is that this tropical activity is too far north to provide direct relief to the southern states. Victoria's rainfall prospects are tied to different weather systems, namely cold fronts from the Southern Ocean and cut-off lows. The current pattern isn't favouring those systems in the immediate term. Tasmania has been running quite dry as well, particularly around Launceston and the Timor Valley. That is a separate weather pattern entirely from what we are discussing today, but I acknowledge the frustration. When the tropics are active, it often means the subtropical ridge is parked over the southern states, blocking frontal systems. Now, I want to talk briefly about the broader context because several of you have raised valid points about ocean temperatures and what that means for forecasting. 2025 recorded new highs in ocean heat content globally. The Coral Sea is warmer than average. That warmth is fuel for tropical systems. One of the reasons we're seeing such an active start to the cyclone season. Koji was unusual for its timing and track. The amount of moisture being pumped into these systems is elevated compared to historical averages. What does this mean for forecasting? Honestly, it adds uncertainty. Our models are calibrated on historical data. When ocean conditions push into uncharted territory, the models can struggle. That doesn't mean we throw our hands up and give up on forecasting. It means we need to be appropriately humble about confidence levels, especially beyond the 3 to 5 day range. change. What I can tell you with confidence is this. The next 48 hours for northwestern Queensland will see continued shower and thunderstorm activity tapering off by Friday. The top end of the Northern Territory is in for a very wet weekend. Far North Queensland should prepare for the possibility of heavy rainfall towards the end of January. And tropical cyclone development, while not imminent, remains a realistic possibility through February and March. For those of you on rural properties, think about your preparation now. Check your fuel supplies. Make sure you can operate independently for several days if roads become cut. Know where your livestock can shelter. If you are in a flood-prone area, have a plan for moving animals to higher ground. For those in suburban areas of the tropical north, the basics apply. Stock up on essentials before the weekend if you are expecting heavy rain. Make sure your gutters are clear. Secure loose items around the yard. Know where your emergency kit is. Have a battery-powered radio in case power goes out. And for everyone, keep checking the Bureau of Meteorology website for the latest warnings and updates. They read the official source and they'll have information tailored to your specific region. The weather across northern Australia over the next 2 weeks is going to require attention, not panic, but attention. We've got an active monsoon, multiple potential low pressure developments and a lot of moisture in the atmosphere. Some areas are going to cop significant rainfall. Flooding is possible in catchments that are already saturated. But we've been here before. Many of you remember Tracy in 74. You've lived through Yassi and Larry. You've seen what real Category 4 and 5 systems can do. What we're re-looking at right now, while significant, is not in that category. Prepare appropriately, stay informed, and look out for your neighbours and mates, particularly those in remote areas who might be harder to reach if conditions deteriorate. I'll continue monitoring the situation and providing updates as the models come into better agreement. The tropical pattern is evolving and there is still a lot that could change over the next few days. But for now, that's the picture as we head towards the end of January 2026. Stay safe out there. Check in on your elderly neighbours if you are in an affected area. Make sure they've got supplies and know what the forecast is looking like. Sometimes the people who need information most are the ones least likely to be checking online updates. And if you're fortunate enough to be in one of the areas not directly affected by this tropical activity, spare a thought for those who are. Queensland's northwest has been doing it tough. Some of those communities have been isolated for weeks. The flooding has caused real hardship. As the waters recede, there's going to be a big clean-up effort required. That's the situation as of this Wednesday afternoon. An active tropical pattern continuing across northern Australia, multiple systems to track over the coming days and weeks. And a reminder that this is the heart of the wet season. So conditions like this, while challenging, are part of life in the tropics. Keep an eye on the forecast, prepare sensibly, and I'll have more updates as the situation develops. Thanks for your attention and I'll catch